Welcome to How to Trust Your Intuition, the podcast, the place where we learn that trust is earned and not given, even with ourselves. I'm your host, Betsy LaFay. I'm a social worker, turned award-winning psychic medium, turned intuition teacher. And my school, Trust Yourself Intuition School, celebrated its 10th anniversary in 2023. Join us each episode as we interview thought leaders and luminaries in every genre. They talk about how and when they learn to trust their intuition. Most say they're still learning. What happens when they do trust it and what happens when they don't. Stick around as we all walk together down the road towards trusting our intuition. It is a joy to bring Sara Dean to the show. Welcome.
Thank you for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
Yes, Sara, I'm excited to dive into what we're talking about today. But before we do, can you please introduce yourself to the audience, who you are, and really what you can help them with?
Sure. So I'm Sara Dean. I'm a speaker, I'm a trainer and facilitator, business strategist and consultant, and a leadership coach. So that sounds like a lot of different things, but they all kind of overlap, and they all came from my podcast. I have a podcast, the Shameless Mom Academy, which I've had for the last 7.5 years. And all the things I just said I do are kind of sparks that have grown from the podcast. And so things are often centered around the Shameless Mom Academy, but a lot of my opportunities to keynote and train and do leadership work come from the work that I've done with the podcast and with my clients from the podcast.
Oh,
so that's
wonderful.
what I'm currently doing. And yeah, that's most of it. I'm sure. I'm like, is there more? I think there might be more. I don't know. It'll come up if we keep talking.
It will. I just want to comment about what you said that really sparks my interest that I didn't really know coming into this is I was listening to her name is Marley Grace. She's got a podcast called Common Shapes. Season 1 just wrapped, and she is an artist, and she's very transparent about how she makes money. And one episode was redefining your business role or your identity of what you do, whatever the short way of saying that is.
Yeah.
And it seems like you were this podcast host, and that's what you did, like a positive Rolling Stone. Just gathering all this stuff, and that just excites me, and I think is just inspiring. I haven't announced this super publicly, but this will air a little bit later. I just added a new stream to my business, stratosphere, and I just found a hidden talent for painting. And so,
Nice.
I'm doing pet portraits, and people are like already giving me all these commissions.
I love it.
I'm
So
43.
fun.
I had no idea. So
Love it.
Yeah. So add that on. Well, as I mentioned before we started recording, your website, to me, I just love it because it actually explains in plain language. And I get along with people who are communication experts such as yourself. And the last part is learning to trust your intuition and be confident in yourself. So again, aligned. And one of those things that, I also help people do, but I love chatting about that you have is you help women. Is it just women or people, or should I say people?
I would say mostly women,
Mostly, yeah,
a few gender minorities, and every once in a while, some dude.
Gotcha.
Some great dude.
I love it. Yeah, I think that's like the landscape of what a lot of us are.
Yeah. I'm open to anyone, but the people who are most attracted to me tend to be women, and mostly moms.
Good. Okay, so the thing I was saying is retraining culturally integrated negative thought patterns. Okay, I'm just going to say this for the audience because I've integrated it into my consciousness. Thought patterns that are negative, okay, but they're culturally integrated. So these are negative thought patterns that are ingrained in culture, I'm assuming, and you help retrain the brain. So I would love to hear about your personal one that you want to share about, one that people need to hear about, or one that you like talking about, a culturally ingrained negative thought pattern that you help people retrain from, rewire their brains with.
Yeah.
Very well.
So there's a number of them, and I think some of them are really prominent and others are more like hidden in the depths of our souls, like messaging that we don't know we're receiving at all times, that then affects how we interact with the world. But I think the most prominent one for women specifically is around bodies, and the idea, the messaging that we should always be trying to get smaller. So you should always have a weight loss goal. You should always be like eating more protein, less carbs, not the sugar, not this, not that, more vegetables, definitely all the water, and definitely track your steps every day, because that all might make you smaller. And if you're smaller, you have more value. And that's not an explicit statement. Like that's not on billboards that if you're smaller, you have more value is a ingrained thought pattern. But most women listening probably are like, oh shoot, I am always trying to get smaller, or wishing I was smaller. Maybe we're not trying to get smaller, but we're wishing, oh, if only I could lose 20 pounds.
Well, wait. I just want to say, use that as like an example and metaphor about the billboards, that it's not explicit, but it's beyond implicit, because there is no one who isn't unhealthily small on billboards or any equivalent.
Right.
So I just wanted to add that, like, well, go on.
Yeah. And I think when we have thought patterns like that, they're not only do they exist within us, but they're also constantly reinforced by media and constantly reinforced by who we see be elevated in the world, that it's really hard to take that thought pattern and shift it in our minds, because it's been with us for so long. And so if you're someone, like if you were raised, for me, I was born in 1975. If you were raised by a mom in the 80s, chances are you have been raised with a lot of diet culture around you. There's a lot of like, what about calories, and like make the crystal light because it's 0 calories, and what else, like the 0 calorie Jello, and like Weight Watchers points, and the cabbage soup diet, and like on and on and on. And so when you carry that with you over the course of decades, and your mom can be, my mom was a fabulous mom, and she did all of those things I just said. And when you carry that with you without awareness that that's what you've carried for 40 years, in my case, it impacts how you show up in the world. It impacts how you interact with the world, and it impacts what you give yourself permission to do or what you hold yourself back from doing. And so in my work previous to the podcast, I had a fitness business for 15 years. And during that time, I worked with high level, powerful women, executives at I'm in Seattle. So like executives at Microsoft and Amazon and like all the big tech companies. And most of them, when they would talk to me about goals in their life or New Year's resolutions, weight loss superseded like getting a raise, going for the next promotion, getting on a stage. Like most of them had weight loss goals and body related goals that were more significant and important to them than visibility and impact in the world.
I'm just taking that in. I mean, that just deserves like a pause, which is rare for me. I will tell. That's why I have a podcast. But yes, I believe that. I really, really believe that. Let's help me out, although I could do this work, but it will also help women out, who I'm sure you just described like the audience when you described, like I'm sure that's like literally,
hi everybody, I see you.
Yeah, we see you. We totally see you. There might be a little more dudes. I've seen an increase in the past like 2 years. So, and when I see them actually show up, I like give them lots of praise, because I'm just
and
like,
I will say sometimes men have received similar messaging.
Yes.
This is not only women who receive this messaging around diet culture, but it's definitely more predominant in women, because it's modeled over the course of generations of women.
Right.
Our dads in 1985 weren't on the cabbage soup diet for the most part. So it's different for men. It's not as dominant, but it can definitely be there. So I don't want to be totally exclusive.
I mean, for me, it was my whole family. My family's a completely different planet. But what, with crystal light, everything, so I know we have to replace, I have to be small. And so the thing that I'm gotten good at personally in my life, I've usually, swung all the way to the other side. Right. So I'm actually really getting much better at walking the middle path, which is what I aim for. So the pendulum swings for me, and it's like, I can be as big as I want. It don't matter, And it's like, but wait,
Yeah.
that doesn't feel right either. And I already know sort of bubbling up what the answer is, but I'd love to hear just like straight up, like what the replacement is or what people can work towards.
Right. So I think the first thing, when you have a message, when you recognize like there's this message that's it's distracting me from the things that are really important. So I'm going to get ice cream with my kid and I'm sitting there miserable the whole time because I'm not getting the ice cream while my kid is getting the ice cream, and I'm drooling over his ice cream and like maybe letting myself have one tiny bite. So when you look at those kinds of things and you check in with yourself, like, what's that all about? And why am I not just getting the ice cream too? Or why am I like every morning when I get dressed, why am I looking in the mirror and like talking down to myself and feeling like none of my clothes fit, or I hate the way they fit, or whatever? When you can catch those patterns and then you can question, wait, why am I thinking that? Why am I having that thought? Then you can start to question, where did the thought come from? And I think oftentimes we can look back to, oh, I was socialized to believe this certain thing. I was socialized, this was modeled to me, whether by my family or people around me in my community or the like world at large. We can see that, oh, I was trained to think this certain thing, but that doesn't mean I have to still believe or uphold that certain thing. And so then you can think through, okay, what's more important right now? Like not eating the ice cream because I was trained to not eat the ice cream, or like having this moment with my kid and letting the ice cream drip down my fingers and onto my pants and like sitting there and laughing. And I think that we can then, or like your clothes not fitting, like nobody, think about how many times you've walked into an office and been like, I really noticed that Jim's clothes didn't fit him very well today. Like we do not notice how other people's clothes fit them. There might be like extreme examples here, but like for the most part, you are not paying. So, but we assume everyone is like going to be like, oh my God, like the blazer's a little tight. Nobody's saying that or thinking that. They don't care. They're too worried about themselves. So when you can catch yourself in thinking those things and then reframe, like recognize where the thought pattern came from and then reframe it in a way that is more functional for you, that allows you to be in the spaces that you want to be in and be fully in them versus carrying around all this junk in the background, then you can start to shift that thinking and you can shift the messaging. And what helps for me a lot, I don't know if this will help for others, but it helps me a lot to be like, oh, some old white men told me that's what I should do and think, or huge corporations told me that that's what I should do or think. And I refuse to be their messenger. So it's not about like, oh, I'm going to go eat all the things now and live in any size and be happy and comfortable or whatever. It could be that, but it's more recognizing, oh, I'm having this thought because of XYZ messaging that I got, and I'm acting in a certain way that's not aligned with my values. So instead, I'm going to start paying attention to, sometimes I want the ice cream. Sometimes I don't. Sometimes I get the small scoop. Sometimes I get 3 scoops. Sometimes I share it with my kid, whatever. And then from there, you can start to have different habits. What you'll find is that you're going to find habits that make you feel good and some that won't. So if you're like, I'm going to start eating donuts every day, at a certain point, you might be like, wow, like I kind of feel like crap every time after I eat the donut. So maybe I'm just going to have a donut every once in a while, because if I do it every day, I want to take a nap afterwards. So it's not about going, you like your mention of like going for the pendulum swinging from one side to the other and being like a rebel because you were on so far on one side that you like now feel like you have to go all the way to the other side. It's more deciding conscientiously what feels good and then where do I want to go with that. And sometimes it is going all the way to the other side and being like, oh yeah, not so good. Like that didn't feel good. CrossFit didn't feel good as it turns out, but maybe I do like yoga, or maybe I do like distance running. And then figuring out, like moving forward from there.
I think you just gave us the key to life. Mic drop. Show ends here, people. We will not be back for another season. Thank you very much. I'm gonna go paint some pet.
Officially retired.
Yeah. No, you really, really nailed it. And you know, that presence. And what I love how, you know, you had that like twist of anger at the end. And I believe what I heard when I was processing it was like, I incite, like, I think in a good way, this anger sometimes. And when I help people process this, because what I ask them is to ask themselves, who benefits?
Yeah.
By me feeling this way. And you answered it by, oh, white men or big pharma or big oil or patriarchy or whatever. And I think it's important. And then my real laugh in the moment was, I've had extreme circumstances in my life. I'm an open book about it, shared on the show about it a lot. There's been 2 times where I've experienced extreme gaslighting. Well, more than that, but and both of them included these people. They're completely separate, but telling me that I was going to want to kill myself, which I never had. And I kept saying like, no, I don't, which is unbelievable. But the second time it happened was with someone who, let's just say, had a prestigious degree in the relevant field, that as a white man was trying to tell me and gaslight me things with studies. And I responded, I refuse to live my life by what a bunch of white men, do and say in a lab about what I should do when like my body says to do something else,
Right.
And then
it's really hard to take advice from people who haven't walked in your own shoes. And so if a man, and this was a huge issue I had in the fitness industry, that so many men in the fitness industry were marketing themselves to women and to moms specifically because they're a captive audience. A lot of times they have like the time to come into the gym in the middle of the day. They have the expendable income. Like, I'm making huge generalizations, but that's the marketplace that many trainers, male trainers in their 20s, want to take advantage of.
Right.
And some of them are very great trainers. And also, for a 22-year-old dude to be giving you postpartum exercises when your uterus is like falling out of you because you had a baby 6 weeks ago is so wildly inappropriate. And that part really, really got to me. And it's dangerous. It's harmful. And it was like, I ultimately couldn't be in the industry anymore because there was such rampant, I think, just unalignment with my values and the industry values. But what you just said, really similar, like for, I'm assuming middle-aged white man or older white man to be giving you, who has this prestigious degree and medical background, to be advising you in that way is so incredibly harmful unless they are able to see it through your lens or ask you to walk them through your lens.
Yes.
Yeah, hugely dangerous.
Oh, and then I was told I was crazy for saying that. So.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah. Well, luckily it's been 2 years, free of all that stuff, which is a great thing. But thank you. And I also just want to say I appreciate your gentle and appropriate, yet also fiery. I think it's great to have contradictions and intuition. Calling that out. I don't know if it'll be the week before this. I'm not exactly sure the order of the episodes, but I just interviewed Veronica Grant yesterday, and towards the end, she mentioned she works with people with their money, and towards the end, she was just talking about what's going on with like the money mindset kind of group, and like calling that out. And I think it's super important. And I'll also say one of my teachers, who I can still be proud to be called, to be having as a teacher, and my mind is going blank. I can see her. Haley. Yes, it's by like I can't see it. Anyways, she also made a pivot in her business because of let's just say, for just brief, like charlatans, right? Like she was helping business owners really sort of like scale, I guess. And they were doing interviews with entrepreneurs to make sure they were at a certain level and whatever. And that was working for a bunch of years, but then all of their efforts had to go into interviewing people to make sure they weren't someone who took a 1-hour gym class and then called themselves a trainer. And it was like, no, we got to get out of that. So I think it's good to hear that, and to hear how people make decisions with their own integrity by pivoting or leaving or calling it out. I think it's very important, and it makes people aware. Oh my gosh, okay, well, maybe I'm following a couple of those people, right? Like, I think it's important to bring this to light. So I just appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that there should be a lot of discernment when you choose who you follow online. And like, let Reddit be your friend.
Reddit,
and I know there's people who disagree with like getting your education on Reddit, but you'll learn a lot about people in certain industries, and the coaching industry is definitely one of them, the fitness industry, the money industry. Like there's a lot of people doing things that are very out of integrity. The world has changed so much in the last 4 to 7 years. And you can't do what you used to do. And the things that we used to do, we now know caused harm in a way that maybe we didn't know. And you can't unsee that once you see it. Like you can't. So if there's people choosing not to acknowledge that, there's probably a Reddit thread on them.
And you literally, this is what did this interview earlier today. She's like, once you see it, you can't unsee it. And I'm like, oh my gosh, deja vu here. And I'm behind the times with most everything having to do with other people. I'm on top of what's up with me, and that's my job. But probably for 4 to 7 years, Reddit, it has been the world's effective Yelp, Google reviews. Like it's the only one. And I went on a new medication, and before I took it, I went on Reddit and learned so much. It was so helpful that no doctor ever told me.
Oh my gosh, that's so. I did the same thing recently with the medication thing. So I was like, I don't feel like I'm getting a really clear answer on this, and I don't want it necessarily from the doctor who hasn't taken it. That's just the prescriber. I want to know, like, when someone's been on this for a few months, what does their body feel like? And Reddit was great. Okay,
so I think this is just, I'm saying it for my sake, because I think probably people know this, but maybe they don't. Your example, our example, what we just explained, is what people are sharing their direct experience with everything, right? So what's your experience with a steam mop? What's your experience with Boosterone, right? Like whatever it is, like that's amazing.
I mean, like, take it with a grain of salt. It's not like, it's not, by no means is everything on Reddit true,
right?
But you can find threads of truth that are repeated, and that is valuable to know, I think.
Literally, that's what I was just going to say. Yes.
Yeah.
And that's what I was like, oh, this person's saying that person. Okay. This.
Yeah.
And
then,
there can
be, there can be a lot of goofy stuff on there, but if you find it,
yes. Well, that's why
there's a lot of smoke though for certain things, certain people, certain situations. And then, like, where there's a lot of smoke, there's definitely a fire.
Yes. Yeah. Very, very smart. Well, I'd love to talk about when and how you learn to trust your intuition. As I said, most people are still learning, but can we learn about that with your process, please?
Yeah, absolutely.
When I graduated with a BA in psychology in 2002, attachment work was only applied to children. Now, in 2023, it seems to be all the rage for a reason, because knowing your attachment type, there are 3 main types: avoidant, anxious, and secure, really changes your life. And if you listen to the podcast where I talked about how I lost $100,000 from a spiritual, quote unquote, spiritual coach, the silver lining to that experience was me discovering the root of a lot of my issues. I was anxiously attached. I had anxious attachment. At the very end of that terrible, terrible situation, yes, it was traumatic, I came across Maya Diamond's work. And it was working through her program that literally rewired my brain from anxious to secure. This is how I made it through all of my major transitions over the past 2 years and discovered so much about myself. Now, if you don't know about attachment work, don't feel bad. Here's a typical situation, in fact, the most common situation that happens with these attachment styles. Person A and person B are in a relationship. They care about one another. Person A reaches out to person B, doesn't hear back right away. So then maybe sends another text or another gesture, which further pushes person B away. Both people get resentful, and eventually they might break up. I was in that situation more often than I'd like to remember. I married the wrong person, I had toxic family relationships, and had no idea until I took Maya's program. So, the link for a free consultation is in the show notes. And I'm so happy to offer all the podcast listeners, if you sign up for her program, you will get a free session worth $500 with Maya Diamond herself, one-on-one. That's just for How to Trust Your Intuition podcast listeners.
I talk about this so much, so I was excited to know that this is what I would get to talk about today. Because I'm always like trying to find ways to weasel it into conversations in terms of women, self-trust, following intuition. And
my favorite thing to talk about.
What I have noticed in the work that I've done with women over the last 20 years is that I don't think about it in terms of like, when did we learn to trust ourselves, or when did we like learn to connect to our intuition? I more think about it in terms of, when did we stop trusting ourselves and lose our disconnection or lose our connection from our intuition? Mm-hmm. And when we look at that, then we can look at how early that starts and how it's through multiple phases of socialization that it happens over and over and over again. So that by the time you are a woman in your mid-20s, you have probably gone through many stages of losing connection with your intuition. So I think it starts at a very early age, around like how little girls are trained to dress cute for others and be cute for others and wear dresses and sit on certain people's lap and like disregard like, I actually wanted to wear like the pajamas with the trains on them, not the ones with the hearts. Or, I don't really like sitting on Uncle Larry's lap, but mom says I have to. Or I don't like hugging cousin Tom, but dad says I have to. So we start to dissociate from our own sense of intuition at a really young age. We go right from that into, again, at a very young age, little girls' bodies and what they should look like, having an awareness around like, oh, my body, like I have a roll of fat on my belly. I'm not supposed to have that. Like my mom says that's bad. My mom does not like the roll of fat on her belly. And that starts at a very, very young age, like in the 5 to 10 year range, or like even 5 to 7 year range. And then from there, we learn that certain foods are good and certain foods are bad. And so we lose our intuition around like, oh, but this thing tasted really good, but my dad or so-and-so says that's bad. So like the Doritos, they taste so good, but oh, those are bad. They have a lot of fat. And this continues over and over. We get into college and we look at rape culture, and that like we're supposed to dress a certain way to attract the right people, but not enough to attract harm to ourselves. Like, where's the line? But we're supposed to know the line. Like there's a line that exists. We don't know what the line is, but you're like, be cute and sexy-ish, but not too cute and too sexy-ish. And then we go into long-term relationships. And even if you're really a really progressive person like I am, it's really easy to fall into gender norms and fall into certain roles where you're recognizing over time, like, oh, I'm like being submissive in a certain way, or I'm being like, why am I the one making all the meals? Or why am I the one cleaning the toilets? Like during the pandemic, by the way, I said, I'm not cleaning any toilets in my house. Only boys clean toilets, because you know who makes the mess on the toilets? It's the boys. Why would I clean the toilets? So we have these stages throughout our lives. And then when we get into a professional world, if we go into a traditional corporate jobs, we are told that anyone who's above us, and that's typically a white male, anyone who's above us has more education, more experience, they know more. We shouldn't question them. We should follow whatever they say, whatever they do, because they know best. And so we're taught and trained to like sit in the back of the room and just listen and be really appreciative that we can even be in the room. Like being in the room is a gift. And so all of that is stripping us of self-trust and stripping us of our intuition. So then we get to the point of having, if you choose to have children, you have no intuition left, and you don't get to pee, you don't get to sleep, you don't get to shower on any sort of schedule that feels right to you, to the point that you don't even recognize when you need to pee, eat, or shower. So you end up being a 45-year-old woman or person, because you've gone through all the socialization, that doesn't know what you want or what you like. And I have so many clients come to me and they're like, I got divorced, or my kids moved out of the house, and I don't even know what food I liked for dinner, because I, for 20 years, only made food that other people like.
Yep.
So I don't know what food I like, or I don't know where I like to go for fun, or I don't even know what a hobby would be if I had time for one. And we don't have any preferences or connection to our intuition because we gave that up over and over and over again throughout our socialization. So that's my really long answer.
Oh, it's beautiful. That's right on.
To where I think it went. Yeah. And then I think from there, then you can start to have consciousness about like, when do you start to bring it back? How do you start to bring it back? How do you start to reconnect to it?
Mm-hmm. 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 Well, how about for you? I mean, how did that work for you?
So for me, because I'm entrepreneurial, I have had many, many opportunities to check in with myself as I've made business decisions to be like, I'm trying this on. How does it fit? How does it feel? Do I want to keep going? Like it's kind of a constant assessment. And I will say early on when I was in the fitness industry and had my own business, in those first 8 or so years, especially, I really wanted to just be seen as someone who was really successful in that industry. It was really important to me to be a woman in that industry who was really successful. And I had male business coaches and I followed whatever they said to do. I was like, yep, I'm doing it. And I did very well doing that. And then at a certain point I was like, hold on, I don't ever want to sell another oh, I can't even think of like bikini challenge type, like get your beach body, whatever. Like, I don't ever want to sell programming that's like, drop 10 pounds in 10 days. Like, I can't, like, it's so gross and harmful, but I did that for a long time until I realized, oh, wait, this doesn't feel good. And when I realized that didn't feel good, I started making business decisions around what feels good and what is in integrity with what I do, not what other people in the industry are doing and not what the people who are even teaching me are doing, but what feels right to me. And when I had my son, my coach, and at the time, still in the fitness industry, my coach was like, hey, you know what you should do? You should do like right after the baby's born, take a picture in your bikini. And then like 6 weeks later, after you've lost the baby weight, then you take another picture in the bikini. And like, that's your marketing tool. Like you're your own marketing tool. And I was like, oh my God, dude, first of all, I've never owned a bikini in my life. Like I'm a one piecer all the way. So there's no way in hell I'm going to be like, here's my bikini body. And also for me to be like, hey, see how I lost all this baby weight in 6 weeks? And for you to suggest that to me as a marketing tool, as a dude who's never had kids.
I was going to say, he's clearly birthed a baby from his body before and wanted it photographed right after.
And he thought he was like, this is actually a really great, like having a baby for a woman is like the best marketing move you can make as a fitness professional. And I was like, oh my God, I can't. So that created the space that for me to really be like, hold on, what feels right? What feels good? And I shifted all my marketing after that in my business. I took so much stuff out of my business. We were doing a lot of challenges. We were doing a lot of body transformation things. And I was like, you know what? Not anymore. Like if you want a transformation, it's around like how to feel more powerful in your body, how to feel strong, how to have more energy. But we're not doing measurements. We're not doing weigh-ins, like none of that. If you want to do that on your own, cool. But that's not what this program is for. Like, that's not what I'm promoting in this industry anymore, because that doesn't feel aligned with my values. That doesn't feel aligned with how I'm going to help you if I help you become strong and powerful here, it's not going to be to lose weight, because that's not what's going to help you be strong and powerful in the outside world. Mm-hmm. And so that was where it started to shift for me. And then, as entrepreneurship does to you, like it's always, you're having to be nimble and creative and adaptive, like all the time. So it's a constant check-in, like, here's what other people are doing. Should I do it that way? What feels right to me? What feels right in this moment? What feels right in this moment culturally? Like in this moment that we're living in right now in 2023, what feels good for my business? Very different than what felt good in 2019. And if you like that piece, I think is so important, in terms of listening inward, to be like, the world is doing this. What feels right for me in terms of the legacy I'm building and the direction I want things to go in terms of the impact I want to have.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Thank you for sharing that. That's a very beautiful illustration. I don't know why, but what kept coming to mind when you were talking about, we're not doing measurements and all of this, was like, I was born in 1980, so I'm not too far behind you.
Yeah.
And in middle school, we had the fitness test, and you had to like reach out, and then they pinched your side of your belly fat, mm-hmm. and they put those measurements on the wall. Mm-hmm. And it's just, and then you're like, if you're going to be powerful, if you want energy and be healthy and balanced. And I'm like, I mean, obviously, isn't that what we should have been teaching in gym class? Like, yeah, hopefully this will all catch up sometime.
If your school is like my son's school and they still do the fitness testing, I would love to invite you to write a letter, as I'm going to be doing this summer, around why schools should not have the fitness test and how they do more harm than good. And if you Google that, you'll find all sorts of resources that you can link in your letter to your school. And I
Right.
love our school dearly, and they don't do the measurement part, but they do the fitness testing, which is I think it's horrendous. It measures nothing. It elevates kids who are naturally athletic and makes everyone else feel like crap, and which is hugely traumatic in those age groups.
What if, like, okay, so I'm assuming at some point in this fitness testing, there's like a run a mile or a run a certain amount, okay, for whatever age group. Can't they just do that in gym class and track it and not even say that it's testing at all because you do that in gym class? Like,
and also with the fitness test, I was talking to my son about the other day. I was like trying to get data from him. I'm like, okay, so what do you do again? He's like, well, we do push-ups and sit-ups and we have to run. I don't remember what it is. It's not a mile, but did have to do a mile when I was younger. His is shorter. But I said, okay, so then after you do that, and he's like, well, we do it, I think 3 times a year. And then we track the measurements or the data or whatever. And I said, okay, but then are you like training to be better at doing push-ups for the next 3 months? And he's like, no. Are you training to so what is this data means nothing. You're tracking this data that, again, the kids who are athletic all year, the kids who played basketball all winter, they're going to do really well in the spring when they do their run, right?
The ones who play video games are not.
Right. Like, it's not tracking anything.
Actually, the ones who play video games are probably going to go down because maybe the summer they did some stuff, but then they're not going to.
Right. Yeah. It's so funny. And this is the thing about socialization is that, like, when you don't stop and look at things critically to be like, who is this going to help and who is this likely to harm? The people that are going to be helped are probably the people who already have the most power and privilege. And the people that are going to be harmed are the people who've probably already been harmed over and over and over again across the course of their lives. Why would you continue to harm them? Yes. And the people that are going to be helped, they don't need your help. They're fine.
They don't need your fitness measurements.
Like, they're going to be fine without doing a push-up test. The soccer team, the soccer star, they're going to be fine without learning to do more push-ups or tracking their push-ups over the course of the year.
You're completely on point. And I'm laughing because this is almost turned into a stand-up because we're just like, what on earth are you actually even doing?
Yeah.
I think it's because they don't want to make up curriculum. How about we just leave it to that?
Well, I think it's like, because it feels productive. Like somewhere along the line, someone said like, oh, this is like a thing we should measure. And so then it feels like metrics and data. And it feels like then we can prove ourselves as a school in a certain way. And organizations do this all the time.
Yeah.
And so we can prove something in a certain way. If we do performance evaluations in this way, we can prove these metrics, blah, blah, blah. Well, who are the performance evaluations helping and who are they harming? What do those metrics really mean? And what are you doing with that data other than just saying like, we do these performance evaluations however often? Like it's people just do them because it's what's been done without questioning, well, why have we done that? And we are in 2023, a very unique time in the world.
Yeah.
We have to question everything that we do right now because of the level of harm we've done by doing things the way we used to do them across the board.
That's right.
You got me like really on my soapbox.
I'm ringing that bell. I mean, this is the stuff I like talking about the most. It's true. And I find, I'll just say, some people are like way, I will say over empathetic, and then they just might always be spinning around questioning too much after hearing something like that. And I say, you deserve to rest. Other people don't want to look because it takes energy, and then you have to make responsibility for your choice. But I always say, this is what I say: if you think our political system is just awesome and there's no problems with the environment, patriarchy is awesome, and capitalism, that's just so cool, and you don't want anything to change, then don't learn to trust your intuition.
Right. Yeah.
And then if you think there are problems, okay, what's the answer? I'm pointing at me right now. And you can take your pointer finger and turn it back around and put it right on your nose. And now you're seeing where you will make the biggest difference. But that's wonderful. Do you have a time where maybe your example of sort of like, I don't want to say waking up, but in a sense it was waking up, big or small, an example of without logic, trusting your intuition, taking a leap, and what happens.
I mentioned selling my gym earlier, or did I mention selling my fitness?
I don't think
business?
so.
Okay, maybe I didn't. An earlier conversation today, I talked about.
Yes, I get it.
Okay, so I have my fitness business for 15 years. I started the podcast in 2016, the Shameless Mom Academy. It was not about fitness at all. It was about like helping women take up space, helping women stop shrinking and start shining, specifically for moms, but lots of women who were not moms listened. I also have like a bit of a following amongst gay men. Like, so whoever wants to listen can listen. But when I started that show, it was just like a little hobby. I just want to test this. I want to see how it feels. A podcast sounds like the right thing for me to try. I had been a blogger in the past. I thought about going back to that, but I thought I'm more efficient and powerful with spoken words than written words. And I'm much less of a self-editor. When I do written words, I have to edit a lot. I get really perfectionistic. Like, ask me to talk about something and give an opinion. Let's go. So, as maybe you've noticed. So I decided to start the podcast while I had the gym. And that was an intuitive, like, I think I might be good at this because I like to work in these certain ways. And I know I have some strengths around this. At a certain point, the gym was doing great. It was having like its most successful years ever. And I also knew that I wanted to grow the podcast. And these ultimately started to become like 2 full-time businesses. And I had a like 3-year-old. And so I was like, I can't, like, this is way too many full-time jobs. And so I went to my husband and I was like, hey, I think I want to sell the gym. And he's like, I'm not sure why you would sell the thing that's like working really well. And I said, I don't think this is where like it just doesn't feel like the right thing for him anymore. I've had like a really great run. I've built this amazing community. I'm so proud of what I've done there. And being in the fitness industry just does not feel an integrity to me anymore. And the work I'm doing in the Shameless Mom Academy feels much more aligned. It's the direction I want to be going. At the time I was making no money doing it. Like my first year with the show, I made like $19.
You're all ready for your vacation. It's really hectic getting here, but you're seated in your airplane seat, looking out the window, and you hear the pilot come on the intercom. Good day, everyone. It's a beautiful day outside, 71 and sunny. As you're aware, to get to where we're going, we need to fly over that mountain range, and sometimes there can be a little bit of turbulence. I'm about 80% sure we'll get there safely. So buckle up, relax, and enjoy your flight. I know that sounds like an absurd situation, but when I put this in context of trusting yourself and trusting your intuition, and I ask people on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the most, how much do you trust yourself? 8 is a very high score when asking people. So if you fall on a 2 to 4 range, you're totally not alone. Now picture this other scenario. You're out to lunch with a friend, and the friend says that they've been having a really difficult time learning French. You ask the logical question, are you taking a class? And their answer is, well, I'm taking Spanish. Guess what? If you want to trust yourself deeply, if you want to have an easier time making decisions, break through blocks, connect with people, know who to connect with when, there's a class for that. I've actually helped thousands of people truly trust themselves in uncertainty, in times of doubt or fear, shame or guilt. And I have a free masterclass called Intuition 101, How to Trust Yourself in Uncertain Times, that will tell you everything you need to know in order to learn to trust yourself. The link is in the show notes. However, you can also go to howtotrustyourintuition.com, all spelled out.
At the time I was making no money doing it. Like my first year with the show, I made like $19. The second year I made $9,000, which is like 400% better. And also like still only $9,000 for a whole year for like, if you're going to be a second income in a household, like a little bit helpful, but not that much. Like definitely doesn't cover a year of childcare so when I said that, he said, I don't know where you'll go with this, but I do know if anyone can figure it out, it's you. And I was like, oh yeah, like I know I can figure it out. It's going to be scary because I'm walking away from like a certain stability, walking into something else, but I know I have proof of concept from other things that I've done that I know that I can do this. And so that was an opportunity for me to really listen inward and recognize, like, this thing, even though on paper it looks really great, it's not working for me. And this thing that looks real bad on paper, $19 in a year, that's the thing that's going to work for me. And that was really, really clear. And I am so grateful when so that was 2018 when we sold. When the pandemic hit in 2020, one of the hardest hit industries was fitness businesses. And the whole time I was like, thank God. Like, I cannot imagine the amount of stress I would have had trying to show up and serve that community, because I cared so deeply about them. And I'm so glad that I don't have that responsibility. I mean, I had a responsibility to serve my current community, but I could still do that virtually. So yeah, that was like a huge intuitive hit.
That is gigantic. That is gigantic. Another random thing that came up while you were talking, this thing on paper and this thing on paper that didn't look so good. I was thinking, not that I heard of her having an option of this thing looking so great on paper, but Michelle Obama, when she chose Barack, with the hole in the floor of the car and like a mattress on the floor with just stacks of books and like newspapers, like it's one of those things. And what I like about that is, a lot of people look to them as a model of healthy relationship and love. And some people romanticize, kissing the frog, I suppose. But it really, if you really follow her, and this is what, you're sort of bringing up the energy of us too, it's like she was feeling in her body, right? It wasn't like she was just programmed to go for the poor person, right? And that's what she was used to, like she was just like, this is what feels nourishing in alignment. And that's what you did. That's amazing. Anything come to mind when you think of something where your intuition told you to do something and you did not do it, and the consequences?
I think there's been a number of things that I, over time, have been slower to do, because I often don't have like an immediate level of trust. I will have a spark around something and then I'm like, okay, but I need to like think about it for a while. I need to like do some research. I need to watch how this is playing out. So, I mean, a great example is like joining TikTok, like not on there. And everyone's like, oh, you gotta get on TikTok, blah, blah. And like joining Threads, like, and those are kind of silly examples, but I'm like, I don't know, like, it seems like it's going to take a lot of time. But then I get a certain handful of months away and I'm like, oh, I probably should have done that back then. So there's different, there's certain degrees that I'm like, I wish like 10 years ago, I really seriously looked into going back to school for certain things. Like I could have a master's by now in certain areas that I love being a learner. And so, and I know I would be really great at doing, like, I think I'm really great at what I do now, but there's moments like that where I'm like, oh, I was waiting too long. Because I was unsure and I didn't trust myself, or I didn't trust that I could handle it.
That's very much in alignment with what you were saying, that like you have to be in alignment with what the world needs at this time, because if you don't pivot at that time, then you miss it. And it's not a FOMO thing. It's not a scarcity thing. It's just, it's a real thing. As an example, as a 43-year-old, I'm in alignment with many other 40-something-year-olds where we find out about the trend through the reels on Instagram that was so 6 months ago on TikTok, right? Totally. So like we're not on trend, and that is because we're not, there, right? That's an example of being behind. I'm usually a little 2 years behind that, but that's an example that makes complete sense. And I can see that. I can see that in my own life, but I can also see it would have been impossible just with the crazy stuff that was going on in my life to do that stuff.
I do think, can I add to that a little bit?
Yeah, of course.
Because I do think there's a lot of times where, and I'll use skiing as an example, and it's an example I use a lot. I learned how to ski when I was 42 because we put my son in ski lessons when he was 5. And then I had been like a very on again, off again snowboarder. And I always was pretty horrible at it. And so I decided like, I'm going to switch to skiing. I'm going to learn alongside him. And it was a ski program that had like 300 children and like 6 adults. And I was one of the 6 adults. It was rather hilarious, but I learned how to ski. And now I'm like, I think 5 seasons in, and I really, really love it. But those first 2 years, every week through winter for 2 years in a row, I would go up to the mountain and I would have like the most nerves and anxiety the whole way up to the mountain. And every time I'd be like, please let it just like start raining really hard so that we get rained out, or please let like something happen, let the power be out so the chairlifts aren't operating so we can cancel the ski lesson. And what I had to learn over time was, while I might not be good at something, I do enjoy the process of learning something. So my intuition is often like, I don't want to do that because I'm not going to be good at it right away. And so then I'm like, oh, just not going to bother trying. And oftentimes it's the process of learning that brings the most joy and pride and resiliency. And what ended up happening with skiing is, on that very first lesson, I remember like, I remember we would put like one ski on the ground and one foot was just standing in the snow. So with one ski on, you're supposed to just like feel the snow under the ski and just feel what it feels like to slide back and forth. And I thought, oh my God, this feels so slippery. There's no way in hell I can put on a second ski and still be standing. But sure enough, 10 minutes later, we put on a second ski and it felt very, very hard to stand. I was like, my skis are just going to fly out from under me at any given point. But over the course of that day, with a little bit of technical training in my lesson, I learned how to stand on skis. And I learned how by the end of the day to like go down a bunny hill and feel like I was absolutely going to die, but then also wanting to do it again because I didn't die. And that was a huge lesson in metaphor for me, that when I am fearful of something, or my intuition is like, oh, that seems dangerous, that when I push through that, it feels really, really good. And so looking at opportunities to do the thing that feels scary, because I've already proven in the past over and over again that those are the things that bring the most growth and joy to my life over, like in the end, even if they start off really scary and really uncomfortable. And so that was a huge lesson for me to remind me, like, keep getting out of your comfort zone. It always sucks in the beginning, and the payoff is always amazing. And it's great content if you have a podcast.
Yeah, I feel like that's just a really good metaphor as well, just for trusting yourself, right? Like,
yeah, totally.
I have a follow-up question for that specific, but I think it's because you said you like to learn. So now that you're not learning how to ski 5 seasons in, do you like it less? Or, you know what I mean? Like, you're like, I love learning something. And it's like, I didn't know it. This is like, now that you're like, got there, like, there's always more you can always get better at skiing. Right. But like, what you're definitely afraid of it. So
I still get a little bit of nervousness. And if I'm going to a new mountain, if I'm doing a new run I haven't done before. But what is amazing to me is that I spent every single day of those first 2 years just hoping that I would not die or break something.
Yeah.
And like, that was a very, like, I'm not exaggerating when I was worried about time. Like, what if I fall and break my neck and die? Like, those were very, very deep, legitimate fears, not like an exaggeration.
Yeah.
So now every time I'm out there, I'm like, look at me. I'm not afraid that I'm going to die today. And that feels like such great progress that I couldn't see for 2 years. I was like, I'm never going to be not afraid of dying on a mountain. And so that piece has shifted tremendously and makes it like, it feels so good to have made that much progress. So it's not, I still have moments where I'm nervous or uncomfortable for sure. And I still put limitations on what I'm willing to do on a mountain, but it feels really good to have that level of growth and recognize, like, remember, you used to be afraid you would die. And I would say this for someone who like wants to get into public speaking, where you're like, I think I might die if I have to get on a stage. And like, you do the thing and you do it 10 or 20 times. And those first 20 times, you might want to die every time. And then you're like, oh wait, but I didn't die, you know? And that feels, and then the thing becomes more and more, like, it's something that you want to integrate on a more and more regular basis, because then you can do like the fine tuning and the tweaking, and it feels amazing when it's done, and you feel excited and proud and like you lit up and you want to keep going every time you finish it.
I feel like no one's ever given such an apt metaphor for trusting their intuition before. I literally am just, the whole time I'm thinking of that, just thinking about it. And I was thinking about it specifically in terms of me giving readings. I cannot say that I was terrified at all, which is a strange thing that has to do with my background and how I'm wired. But, definitely I'm human and want to please and don't want negative reviews and all that, don't want conflict. But yeah, I've been skiing with smooth sailing for quite a while there. That's amazing. And if someone wants to re-listen to what you had to say about skiing and really just think about it, about trusting their intuition, especially in the absence of logic, Miss Sara Dean. And I'm just poking at you. I mean, we both love learning and teaching, and I'm always teach what I need to learn too. So I'm not perfect either. So where can people find you, and what would be a wonderful example of a superhuman you'd like to work with? So what are they needing help from you for?
Yeah. So people can find me for the podcast, wherever you listen to podcasts. You can do a search for the Shameless Mom Academy. We're on all podcast players. You can find podcast related stuff at shamelessmom.com. And then for the work that I do around speaking and facilitating and training, that's at saradean.com. You can reach out for either. So I do business consulting and leadership coaching through either site. You could reach out to ask for that. So shamelessmom.com or saradean.com. If you are working in a company and you need someone to come in and inspire your team, or do some group facilitation around training groups and teams to recognize how their self-trust and socialization maybe impacts how they show up for a team, I'm your gal. It's my favorite thing to talk about. There's so many ahas when you sit around a table in a corporate environment and you're like, look how you forgot or stopped trusting yourself. And for men to see, oh my gosh, like the trajectory that women are on in terms of having their self-trust stripped from them. So eye-opening for men to see. So yeah.
I'm so glad you're in there doing that. That's exciting.
Yeah.
Real quick, 7 years for the podcast. What might be the most popular episode, or one that you really want to highlight? What's your favorite?
There's so many. We're almost at 800. So I would say one of the most popular ones was around the mental load of motherhood. The other one is around mom guilt as a social construct. So I think it's called Mom Guilt is a Lie. I've done a few about mom guilt, but I think it's Mom Guilt is a Lie is the one that's gotten a lot of traction. So those are like the two that are really specific to motherhood. I've had so many amazing guests, and I don't know if you've had this experience, but I find that the guests with the biggest names are often not the guests who give the greatest interviews, which has been something that's been a disappointment I've had to learn over and over again. And often it's the people who don't have a recognizable name or any notoriety who give outstanding interviews. The person I would say that, and this is not a recommendation I would have made a year or two ago, I had the opportunity to interview Dave Hollis, Rachel Hollis's husband, for people who are in the personal development space that might be familiar. And they went through a lot of public stuff that was pretty ugly in terms of some areas where they needed to do a lot of growth in the public eye, and they opted not to. I did an interview with Dave before that, and I was actually really impressed with how he showed up. Dave has since passed away in the last year. He passed away from addiction. And when I look back at that interview and how authentically he showed up, I can see who he wanted to be in the world. And I think it's a lesson for all of us, like being the person that you want to be in the world, and who I really think he was, but then also trying to be this person on stage and like uphold this certain persona, especially that was driven by his partner at the time, his wife at the time. I think really created a space where he lost track of himself and his own identity in there. And that interview will always stick with me because of that, which is, I realize the irony, and I'm like, here, let me uphold a white man. But that interview just really stands out to me as one where someone showed up really authentically.
Well, thank you for that. The Mom Guilt too, as well. Those are great. I want to say I am only in like my second or third season of interviews. So I wasn't aware of, I'll see if that tracks on my side as well about that, but it just brought me a little bit of comfort. I wasn't feeling like I needed it, but I just invite people to the show that I'm excited to speak to, and don't hear back from a lot of them, and then just trust my intuition. There's been a few that have booked. I'm like, oh, yep, that's not going to work, and we switched around, and but I'll see. Like there was a part of my logical ego, right, that is like, well, this person doesn't have that many things, and I'm just like, but me personally, I don't care. I mean, I know so much about how those numbers don't matter when it comes to many things that matter to me.
Yeah.
Because do I care about people getting corporate sponsors? No. What's that?
A lot of people that have all the numbers are very unhappy people.
Yeah, it's true. There's
a lot of facades behind those big numbers.
That's really true. Yeah.
Well,
on that note, I'll include all the links in the show notes for people. This has been real and authentic and joyous. And again, I feel like we could just talk for hours. Like, I want to know about that group stuff. Yes. I'm into that stuff as well. So thank you so much. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here today.
Thank you, Betsy. This was great.
How to Trust Your Intuition, the podcast, is written, produced, and created by me, your host, Betsy LaFay. Music provided by Ben Talmy. If you don't want to be like that pilot that is 80% sure you'll get to your next destination safely, and you want to take the right class to learn the right language, and guess what? Intuition is a language. Head over to howtotrustyourintuition.com. I hope this podcast has been helpful to you. If it has, please forward it to a friend who you think it could also make a difference for. There's something that you can do for me and everyone else who listens to this podcast as well. If you hit subscribe, you'll never miss another episode. It'll also help the show get to other people. And of course, I know you've heard other podcast hosts say this before, but it's totally true. If you leave us a 5-star rating and a review, it helps other people like you discover this podcast. We all need to learn to trust our intuition. So, hit subscribe, give us a 5-star review, and write a little blurb while you're there. Your intuition will thank you.